Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode. My name's Sean Waskrug. With me, as always, is Brian Michaels. It's been a while. You and I don't think we've done a show since July because we decided to take a month off. And I haven't personally done a show here in the last 3 weeks because I was on vacation. And I actually gave myself a proper vacation and not actually did any shows during that vacation. So, hello, guys. We're back. As much as Brian's chagrin, I don't want to do these many shows.
No, that's not quite true. It wasn't the quantity of shows so much as it's I want to find shows that we actually want to talk about, not just because we have to do one of this kind of show this month, even if we don't have something that really is we really want to talk about.
It's content, Brian. It's content.
So and plus it was a slow period anyway. So you know what? And you were taking your vacation. Yeah. So let's take the month off. We're back now. Let's talk about some stuff.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the dry spell that was the end of the summer movies on a different show coming out this month, which I'll run through the show list by the time we're done with this episode. But today, we're doing something a little different. We're talking about TV, guys. And I'm not going to lie, Brian, I have had a lot of people go, when are you going to talk about TV shows? And I'm like, well, it's because it's kind of hard for Brian and I to both to be like, hey, let's watch this show. Do you want to do episode shows? Do you just want to do the whole season? We were going to do Obi-Wan. We were going to do it, and then we just kind of decided not to do that. But
and then we watched it, and we're underwhelmed, and that's why.
I enjoyed Obi-Wan. I still haven't watched that cut yet. I still haven't watched it yet. But now, because frankly, we just really didn't have much to talk about in terms of movies.
And honestly, I don't watch a lot of TV. I mean, I watch the MCU shows, and I watch some of the major things like that, the Star Wars shows, which are getting a little bored of those, honestly. But my thing is, I used to watch tons of TV. I used to be the kind of person who this is back when network TV was the main thing. I had a schedule of which nights.
I had the same thing.
I had figured out what shows I could watch, which one I had to record on my VCR or whatever.
I had a full schedule. Monday, breaking down in 30-minute increments, and I had it in front of my TV, so I knew what was coming on that night. Because we didn't have a freaking computer in front of us that would tell us that, but we wanted to have it there, and then each fall I'd be like, it's time to update the list.
Yeah. but really honestly, the last several years I've watched hardly any TV at all. I mean, there'll be shows that pop up now and then that I'll watch, your Game of Thrones, your Stranger Things, and now your MCU shows, things like that, but I don't watch a lot of actual TV at all. But it's now we're hitting this period where right now, especially in a couple weeks, there's going to be a time when you got Rings of Power and She-Hulk and House of the Dragon and Andor is going to start and all at the same time. So it's getting to be a busy period.
I believe, there's something else. Oh, for me, Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai starts here, I think, next week. But yeah, it's one of those things where August and pretty much September till at least the end of the month is so weak on movies. But TV is coming out swinging.
I honestly think that's why they did it. I think they said, you know what, people don't go to movies this time of year. Let's catch that audience. And
it's because I'm the same way. I like you used to watch a ton of TV. I still watch a lot, but most of it is like in terms of broadcast shows like ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox. I maybe watch a handful of shows on there. And a lot of it
anymore. Nothing.
There's a couple shows I'll watch The Rookie because of Nathan Fillion. There's a couple shows here and there, but a lot of it's more streaming. But unless it's something like Stranger Things, the MCU, or Star Wars shows, or Umbrella Academy or something, it's more or less I'll watch them. If they're week to week, I'll wait and watch until the season's over so I can just binge it. Or it's after the craze has died down, then I'll watch it. So that way I'm not everyone's just all up in my face about it. But these three shows, well, one of them is of course an MCU show, so obviously we watch it week to week. But the other two are two shows that literally are just like they were back when they came out. Well, one of them anyway, is must watch or you're going to get spoiled, which is House of Dragon, because Game of Thrones is, I love they use the term the water cooler show. Who the fuck goes to a water cooler anymore at work? We're in COVID area. You stay 6 feet away at all times. But it's one of those shows that if you are not watching it when it drops, there's a good chance if you go online Monday through Tuesday, you are not going to make it through unscathed without getting spoiled. She-Hulk.
And not even social media. You go on a news site and it'll have some headline that's okay.
You go. I can't remember what show it was. I really can't remember what show it was. It wasn't one of these. I just went on to check my mail, and in the side thing was a headline thing popping up, and it was a spoiler. And I'm like, I didn't even click on anything. Like, what? Why? Why would you do that? It's just like, and you're just pissed off and mad. But with these shows, House of Dragon and now Lord of the Rings: Ring of Power, I remember even today at work, I was telling people like, yeah, we're shooting a show tonight for House of Dragon and Ring of Power. And like 3 people were like, don't say a word. I haven't watched it yet. I was like, I wasn't going to say anything. I'm just saying I was shooting a show tonight. They're like, don't you spoil. I'm like, I'm not saying anything. Calm down. Watch the show and we will. Because here's your spoiler warning right now. We're not going to hold back on this episode. We're going to talk about the first 2 episodes of both House of Dragon and Rings of Power and the first 3 episodes of She-Hulk. We're not going to beat around the bush. We are going to talk about what we like, what we don't like, and where we think this show might go. So if you haven't been caught up to all 3 of these shows, come back and check this out once you have, because we're going to spoil the shit out of all this crap. But first things first, initially when we were discussing this show, we were only going to do House of Dragon and Rings of Power because, Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones. But after the 3rd episode of She-Hulk, Brian was like, I have thoughts. I have things I want to say, and I'm probably going to say it on that show. And I was like, you know what? I do too. So let's just add She-Hulk into this. And we always have plenty of time to talk, so let's just get away. So let's go ahead and start off with She-Hulk. Now, before let's get this disclaimer stuff out of the way. Brian and I love the MCU. We do. We are very, very pro MCU. But when
Sean
we
hates
don't,
women.
Brian also hates women. Not where I was going to go with that, but anyway. But when we don't like something in the MCU, we are very like, we don't like this. And whether it's, and granted, what sucks about it is the stuff that we don't like is the stuff that's the most like people like the Eternals. And I don't hate Captain Marvel, but I didn't like the story, and it has nothing to do with Brie because I like her. I like her as Captain Marvel. It's the way it's written, and it's the way that movie was shot, and all this kind of stuff. And Eternals is just fucking bad. You and I like both have said ad nauseum, if they never came back, we would be happy. We know that's not true because I know we've already seen them on set with Loki season 2.
And it's the only MCU movie that I have never rewatched and probably never will rewatch.
I still have not rewatched Eternals since theaters. If I ever go back to rewatch it, it's because I'm either trying to do a complete MCU rewatch or Eternals 2 is coming out, and I'm like, I have to watch this or I'm not going to remember anything. And Brian's like, I'm good.
I'm good on that, yeah.
But for the shows, Brian and myself, for the most part, liked, maybe not loved, but liked most of the shows. And then Miss Marvel came out. I don't hate Miss Marvel, but clearly this show was not made for Brian and I. I think the finale saved the show, in my opinion. Brian's the exact opposite. Brian thinks the one episode that worked was the one episode I couldn't stand, which was the flashback episode where they're talking about like her grandma. And all. Like I remember.
I like that story. I wouldn't say it worked as far as the show
was the one episode that you were like, I actually like this story.
I enjoyed it. I felt like it was completely had nothing to do with. I mean, well, it has something to do with it, but it felt like it didn't work for the show. But I thought it was a good story. Put it that way.
I remember. I was watching it, and because that story is like 20-some minutes of the episode, and I sent you a text. I'm like, I don't give a flying fuck about this story, and you go, I actually think the story is better than the actual show itself. And I was like, well,
I think that says more about how I felt about this show story than it did about how I thought.
I don't, and here's the thing, I don't blame the cast. I think I'm blanking on the girl's name who plays she or Miss Marvel.
I don't remember. And
I think it's Amon something. We're not talking about Miss Marvel, so I don't have to pull up. But I don't hate the cast. I don't. It was more the writing and how they structured the show and stuff like that. It just didn't flow for me. Much like Brian and I both really enjoyed Moon Knight. We liked the way they structured that show. I love Hawkeye. I love the way they structured that show. So with She-Hulk coming up, trailer-wise, obviously didn't sell us. Now, the big thing that sold me on She-Hulk was that I love, and I want to make sure I say her name right, Tatiana Maslany. I I love her. Anyone who's ever seen Orphan Black loves her as well. Brian has never seen Orphan Black, so he didn't really know her much before She-Hulk came out.
I think I'd only seen her in like small roles in like The Vow and Stronger and stuff like that. Yeah. But I knew who she was. I was aware of Orphan Black. I just never watched the show.
Yeah, I think she's a phenomenal actress. And when I saw that they casted her as She-Hulk, I'm like, fantastic. That is perfect casting. She's going to knock this out of the park. First trailers came out. Now, Brian is very, very high on this criticism. I really kind of don't give a shit. Brian is very hating on the CGI of She-Hulk.
Rightfully so.
I will admit it's not the greatest. Even Hulk, in my eyes, didn't look that good in the first episode. But it's not, for me, it's not like make or break. If the story's good, if the characters are good, and I'm having a good time, I will let the CGI slide. Brian can't let that shit go. Brian?
Yeah, okay, I'll get this out of the way now. So, yeah, it's. I mean, the one thing is, whenever I say something like that, people come back with, "Oh, it's just a TV show. It doesn't have a movie budget." Like,
I don't agree with that.
They are giving these Marvel TV shows feature film budgets. For starters, they're just spreading it out over more episodes. Yes, but the thing is, but like Hulk, like you said, actual Hulk, Bruce Banner Hulk, he definitely didn't look as good as he did in the movies, but he still looked pretty good. Maybe because they're still using models they had already created for the movies.
Yeah, he definitely was more Avengers Hulk,
but
and not like Endgame Hulk.
But She-Hulk herself, I mean, the CGI on her is just awful. I mean, people complain about the first trailer; it didn't look quite right. But no, even now, even the finished product, it looks very fake. It looks like mid 90s CGI, and she looks like a character out of Shrek. Like this last episode, especially, there's two scenes especially that jumped out at me when she's just walking through the office next to her assistant, and I swear it just looked like, I don't know, bad video game cutscene or some kind, like I said, some early 90s CGI. It was so bad. I'm like, is this not their animatic? This is their final product. It's just, and yes, I can overlook bad or obvious CGI. RRR, perfect example. Every single animal in there, clearly CG, but it still is awesome because you're invested in the story.
Rocks, and it's our new The Night Comes for Us. We love The Night Comes for Us, but if you haven't seen RRR, watch that shit. It's fucking amazing.
But it's clearly obvious CGI, but because you're invested in the story, you overlook that. You get into it. But here it's like, it just, every time I see it on screen, I'm just like, oh, it gives you more reason to cringe watching this thing. But that's just the CGI. We'll go back in the story. Go.
See, and this was the first episode. Episode 3 was the first time that I noticed it, because I'm one of those people that like,
it's been rough on 3. But
when it's great, I go, oh shit, this actually looks really, really good. When it's bad, unless it's something like an eyesore to me, like Miss Marvel had a scene in the finale that to me looked horrendous. And it was the scene where she finds the two guys in the alley, her two boy toys, and she's jumping down on each little platform. That thing looked like 90s CGI.
There was actually several times in Ms. Marvel where, especially anytime she was doing jumping around and stuff like that, it was clearly CGI.
It looked god awful. In She-Hulk, I thought the first episode where it was both of them on the island, I thought they looked fine. I didn't hate anything that. But there was something in the third episode. I think it was when she was actually sitting down talking to I can't remember who she was talking to, but like her mouth didn't match her voice. And normally that's like, oh, well, that's animation. But it's like, not MCU though. Like that's something that they should never have an issue with. That's something they should never have a problem with. CGI aside, which is a big side for Brian, but CGI aside, first episode of She-Hulk, we have the whole introduction of her and Bruce's relationship, how she became a She-Hulk, this weird alien ship showing up, and then they crash, which I thought was kind of like which I'm sure we'll get more story on that or that's going to lead into a whole nother Hulk thing, which we might not find anything else out for the rest of the season. I actually really enjoyed the first episode. I loved Jennifer and Bruce's chemistry together. I thought they were fun. They're cousins, right? They're cousins. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But they felt like brother and sister to me. I enjoyed their little back and forth. Like I love the moment where he's trying to get her to meditate, and she's talking about how yoga tries to make her ass look tight. She goes up top. He's like, gross, I'm your cousin. I was like, I loved that little banter back and forth. I loved how she was doing everything so easily, and which I know pissed off so many people, but I loved how she was doing it so easily. You could see that he was particularly getting like butthurt about it. Like, I loved that banter back and forth. When she was on the show with Bruce and they were kind of secluded, doing their own thing, I loved the show. When she comes back to the real world, I feel like the acting, the dialogue, and so much of it is just cringy as cringe can be because women empowerment shit in this, which, like I said, I don't care. We love women. We don't care about women superheroes. We've, carried torches for a lot of them. But there's one character in every episode that just has this one line where it's like, that was like a forced cringe line to push this envelope that you guys are trying to push, which mainly it was for most of the episodes, it's this one lawyer, Dennis Bukowski, who's played by Drew Matthews. Just every line that comes out of this guy's mouth is cringy as fuck. Now you go, well, that's the character. No, you don't have to have a character be like that unless you're pushing this I'm blanking on the word. You're pushing this what's that?
Agenda? Is that what you're going
Thank you, agenda. You're pushing this agenda of, holding back, Jennifer and making her feel like she's less than because she's a woman and da-da-da-da and da-da-da-da. And it's just like, we're in 2022. We don't fucking need a character like this. And like in episode 3, you had the news reporters and the hosts that were just, each one was cringe, which they all have that. But like, there's that one at the very end where she's like saying like, well, my name's actually Jennifer Walters and Abomination's actually, Mel Blonsky. He's like, cool, right. Anyway. And it's like, no, it's just like, I don't like these. Come on, like, give these characters some actual decent dialogue instead of this cringy lines back and forth. And to me, that's the biggest thing that's been holding me back on these episodes is that since she has come back into the world and she's away from Bruce and stuff, everyone except for her friend's fine. And the guy who played Chase and Arrow, he's like obviously the potential love interest for her on the show.
John Segarra plays
who plays Pug. I don't mind him. I actually like the actor. I think he's a funny actor. But it's like everyone else is like just cringy as fuck with line dialogue. Don't blame necessarily the actors. I blame the writing. Thoughts?
So I watched the first. And I've never been super excited about the show, but then again, I know nothing about the character. I mean, I know I've seen her, like pictures of She-Hulk, obviously over the years and stuff, but I don't know anything about the story of her, things like that. So they say they're doing a show of this. I'm like, fine. I don't know why they're doing She-Hulk, but fine, whatever. But I like the cast they put together, so I check it out. And it's an MCU show, so it's going to at least be a certain level of entertaining. And I did, for the most part, enjoy the first episode. Like you've already said, I like the cast. Tatiana Maslany, I really like her. I feel a lot about her character in this, like I did about Moon Knight with Oscar Isaac. Is like, I would really like it if most of the show was just her as her. And not as She-Hulk, just like I'm like Moon Knight, fine, whatever. I like Oscar Isaac playing like without the costume and stuff, being Oscar Isaac, and so I kind of feel like that way about it because I really like her on the show. But even when
she's got a great quirky personality that you love to watch her personally, like facial reaction and everything. But when she goes to She-Hulk, you lose all that.
Yeah, so even when she is She-Hulk, I mean, she's still fun. She still kind of has that personality. But again, you're dealing with like CGI on her facial expressions, things like that. So not everything quite carries as well. Her relationship with her cousin Bruce is one of the best things about the show. Of course, he's gone away, which my understanding is that leads on to some other story that probably will not be covered in this series.
That, or he'll pop in like in the finale or the last
something like that. But even then, I don't think it's going to be like. It'll still be more leading into a story for some future project. I don't think that story is getting resolved in this show.
Yeah.
The supporting cast, I don't have nearly as much a problem with Dennis as you do. I think that even if this was, I mean, because they've referenced Ally McBeal a lot when they talk about the show, and even on like a legal show like that, a comedy, they'll always have like the one like douchey guy in the cast, and he'll make his comments, and he's kind of like the foil, the antagonist for her. I don't have a big problem with him. It is what it is. And for all we know, we aren't going to see much more of him in the rest of the series. Who knows?
We can only hope.
Jamila Jamil, who played Titania,
who 2 seconds on screen.
They made a big deal about she was going to be on the show because she was in The Good Place, things like that. And she showed up in the worst part of episode 1, which is just like this anime flying kick that defies, gravity.
It looked bad.
It was horrible.
Really
and plus,
bad.
just her costume and everything looked bad. I'm like, please tell me that's all she's going to be on the show, because I don't want to see her.
Oh, no, I'm pretty positive at the end of episode 3 when we'll talk about those villains, but when they talk about their boss, I'm pretty sure she's the boss.
Yeah. And one person I do want to see more of, I think this episode might be the first time we saw her, was Renee Elise Goldsberry, who's from Hamilton. She showed up briefly in this episode. I'm hoping we see more of her in the show, because I like her.
I love her. And yeah, she had that brief moment. But yeah, I think she's going to be in it more as well. So I think she's going to actually partner with her.
Yeah, I think she becomes a bigger role in this. So cast-wise, it's fine. The story, I don't, like I said, I like the cast. I don't mind the tone of the show. It's like most Marvel projects, everyone has already gone ad nauseum about how they kind of all have their own tone and identity to them, and that's fine. And this one's leading into kind of the sitcom or the legal comedy or whatever it is, and I don't mind that. It's like Marvel could use some comedy. It's fine. I don't even mind the fourth wall breaking. Actually, some of those fourth wall breaking moments are some of the most fun moments of the show.
I don't mind that.
However, I do think that is going to take away from the specialness of Deadpool. Because it used to be like there's the MCU, and then there's Deadpool, this character who kind of does that. He's kind of separate from everybody else. But now they have her doing it as well, which I know has apparently happened in the comics. I haven't read them, but I've heard about this. Apparently she's in some runs of the comics. It's fine. Like I said, I don't mind that. I think that, like I said, I think those are some of the funniest moments. So even that, but it's just the story of the show, and actually even the plots of the show, because I can't even really tell what the overall plot's going to be. It seems to be kind of doing its own thing every episode, which maybe that's a good thing. But like you said, it's almost kind of like I don't know what to call it. Not the tone, but just the way each episode comes together. There's just a lot of eye rolling moments. There's a lot of lines of dialogue which is like, oh my gosh. Now again, and now I understand them playing up the woman's angle and how the world's against them and all the troubles. And I know like some women felt super empowered, like when she goes on her speech about, how, every day we have to try and contain our anger because we're being overlooked and all this stuff. And I again, maybe this is just, it's not made for us. It appeals to a certain audience. That's great. I do think they are playing it up a little bit much, but I don't feel like completely knocked over the head with it.
And that's the thing. Even that's her saying that stuff, and I have no problem with her saying any of that stuff. It's the world around her that I am having the problem with.
And then comes this week's episode. Because the first one I liked a certain amount. The second one I liked not quite as much, but I still enjoyed.
You and I have been in agreement. We are liking the show less and less by the episode, and this was the one we were both just like, yeah, we were going to let this go by. We need to talk about it now.
In this episode, I was like okay with. I'm like the whole abomination thing and that. That's fine. They've kind of, they've obviously changed the character and they've added more comedy to it and things like that. And okay, it is what it is. Even Wong, they kind of turn into kind of a doofus as well, but it's fine. But then the whole thing with the Megan Thee Stallion. Not just mentioning her name, not just having her show up in the courtroom, not just having an additional scene there, but then that whole end credit scene. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I actively hate this show now, because it was the stupidest moment. It was the least funny thing in the world, and it went on forever. And what gets even more is I hear people go, oh, that was the funniest thing in the world. I'm like, you thought that was funny? And it was some of the worst CGI of the episode, not already bad CGI, but we already talked about that.
Yeah, the Megan Thee Stallion, which I don't really listen to her music, so I don't know how important she is. I don't know if she's like a Beyonce kind of character or a Cardi B kind of person. I don't, because I don't listen to that.
I think she's more in the Cardi B, Nicki Minaj kind
of. Which I
area.
Personally can't stand their music as well, because
it's not even the music, but even that's the personality and the way they
act. It's the personality of it,
and it's not entertaining.
It's one of those things where she has a focal point in the story because this Asgardian elf is impersonating her. Now, if she was on the episode playing the impersonated elf, fine, because that was the layup for it. But then
I thought that's where they were going with it, yeah.
Yeah, but then have her just randomly show up in the back of the courtroom. First off, no one noticed her. She's Megan Thee Stallion. No one noticed her? They don't have fucking cameras on her.
Why would she be there? B, no one
exactly. Why is she there? Except for a cheap a cheap cameo.
And C, she signs up with Jennifer Walters as her attorney in the
But
end
she's
credit
not
scene,
she's not
regardless
special.
of the fact that her whole practice, her whole job here is superheroes, and Megan Thee
It's
Stallion is
probably
not
one
one.
of those. I thought that too. I was like, she's not a fucking superhero. She could probably say like, I'm gonna be her lawyer on the side, kind of thing. Which, okay, fine,
She couldn't
whatever.
be doing
And then,
that work at that office then.
yeah. And it's one of those things like the whole twerking thing. Yes, I roll to the max. Yes, maybe Sean, you and Bryce don't know how to have fun. No, we love to have fun. There's a lot of funny shit on this show. That wasn't one of them. That was just like the her I will kill for you. That part was funny because that's She-Hulk stuff, and her going, "Hey, back up." That part was fine. The twerking was not funny. It was just kind of like, and like you said, it just the CGI looked really bad, and also it made She-Hulk also not look nearly as big because she's supposed to be like 6'7", and I'm sure Megan Thee Stallion is definitely not that big, but like putting them side by side twerking, it looked weird size wise. But it's just one of those things where it's like Jennifer's character is very. If it was Jennifer doing it and not She-Hulk, I think it actually would have made more sense. But she's got to be She-Hulk. It's got to be funnier if she's She-Hulk, and it just didn't work for me. And it was more or less. I honestly am more okay with the twerking than it was her popping up in the courtroom, because that was just that felt like such a parody thing. Where it's like someone's parodying an actor in like Scary Movie or whatever, and then that person pops in real quick going, "Yeah, that's what you do. You try to be me." Okay, cool. He was in the movie. That was very funny. Not in this, because it just made me go, why is she there? Is she a witness? Is she there to kind of say, "Hey, I wasn't with you" or anything? But we didn't see those scenes. No, she's just there going, kind of thing. And it's like that's not. It's a cheap. It feels like a cheap laugh that is not needed for the show. And it just, once again, it just kind of lessens it. Like, that's a Stan Lee type of cameo, but Megan Thee Stallion has not earned a Stan Lee-like cameo. I don't think any actor, technically, has earned a Stan Lee-like cameo, and it didn't work for me. And, like I said, we're not going to stop watching the show because it's MCU, and we need to know what's going on, because now it's become pretty much like schoolwork where you have to watch these or you're going to miss out something, in the later films. It's just episode 3, I don't know. To me, almost nothing worked. Even the Asgardian elf thing, it didn't really work for me either. Like I said, her friend and Pug, I was fine with. I had no problem with them. Like, I actually even liked the Pug reaction of when the elf came through. He's like, I like, womanizing women. And he's like, that wasn't me. Y'all know me. Like, I like him. I like his character, but it was just
it feels like it wants to be female Deadpool, because besides the fourth wall break, it's also doing that thing where it's like, poking fun at things like they pull an Asgardian elf and they have did you guys mug or rob a Asgardian construction worker to get these weapons randomly?
Those fucking guys that showed up at the end. I mean, that part was just like, what the fuck are we watching right now?
Yeah, just little things like that. I'm not sure where they're going with all that, because they also are trying to shove a lot of Easter eggs in here. Like, there's a whole thing of like, when they show the website, there's like, man with claws in bar fight, thing, a reference to Wolverine, and there's been other kind of things like that. And it's like, so are we supposed to think that this is canon, or is this going to be things that, that was just a little fun thing we put in there? But then it's like, well, you're kind of making the show canon, so it kind of does have to already exist.
You're bringing in a lot of things that are going to cause a lot of excuse me, kind of thing. But yeah, like the Asgardian, I wouldn't even call him Asgardian, but like the gang of guys at the end of the movie. First off, that one dude she flung in the air, that dude should have died. The way he landed, that dude ain't getting back up.
They weren't Asgardian. They had mugged an Asgardian construction worker and got
it. But that one dude she threw up, like the way he lands on his back, dude, no, that guy's done. Dead. That guy's done. And he got back up and ran. Like, these aren't superheroes. These are regular dudes.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, that guy's dead. And then you have that. Now, if they had done that, but then it can't be a comedy. But if that became a thing where they sued her because of the injuries, then you're adding on to the She-Hulk thing where she's dangerous and all this kind of stuff. But then
it could be, it's a comedy, so again, they wouldn't do it. Or if she did something like that, killed a dude. And it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
it becomes the whole thing about with great power comes great responsibility, that, you know, whole Marvel
Yeah.
thing. But it's
But
like,
no, I'm pretty sure next episode we're probably gonna get the Tinder episode where she's like, "Oh, I can actually have sex with this." Like, I'm pretty sure that's
oh
got
yeah,
to.
the people behind this show keep calling it the horniest MCU show, so I'm sure there's plenty more of that coming.
I mean, Tatiana's fucking sexy as hell. So
Which, and I'm fine. Like I said, I'm fine with the comedy. I'm fine with the tone. It's just
Yeah.
the way they're going about some of it. It's just so eye rolling. It's just
It's what you say, it's the writing. I don't dislike
CGI.
any. What's that?
And the CGI.
And the CGI. I don't dislike any of the characters except for the douchebag character. Like I said, he plays a douchebag well. I'm not even blaming the actor for that. It's his lines of dialogue that I am having problems with. You can be a douchebag and have better writing for him. Like, he wasn't necessarily that bad in this last episode because he was playing that douchey level. It was more his lines of dialogue, which were only like 2 lines at most in the first and the second episode. Those are the lines that I had problems with of him. In the third episode, he's leaning into everything and he's being fine with that. It's the first 2 episodes where I'm like, what the fuck is the point of this character? Except for, you know, he's a guy lawyer who's going to hold her down. And even when she's She-Hulk, hey, how'd you get those powers? Nepotism. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, what is with these lines?
I do want to I do want to mention one positive thing about, well, I mean, we mentioned some positive things.
We can
One
mention
thing
positive things.
is I think that they handled the Abomination thing very well, because when you're like, oh, you're gonna defend him, like, how is this supposed to work? How is there any excuse for what it? But then they did, you know, how he thought he was doing his job as ordered, and they turned him into this monster and blah blah blah. I'm like, and kind of like her, I'm like, huh, he's got a point. You know?
He thought he was going to be bloody Captain America, and then you had in Falcon Winter Soldier Captain America doing this. I'm like, that was clever. I liked that. And the one part that really irked me about the last episode was the what are they, judges? They were all screeching like little babies because he was
the parole board.
Yes, like you had the one dude who was like on his knees hugging the girl, like high pitched screaming. It's like, dude, man up. He like, come on, like this is borderline ridiculous kind of thing. It's like it's over the top acting for the comedic, and it doesn't work. It's not funny. If anything, like I said, eye rolling. But I think Tim Roth, who I love, I am actually liking his comedic tone in this. It's just that nonchalant kind of thing, like, oh, I wrote some haikus, I'll send you some.
I think I have to think he's probably done for this show. I mean, obviously he's come back in the Thunderbolts thing, but
he may pop up again. But I'm okay if he doesn't come in anymore, because they, once again, like she even does a fourth wall in this. Like,
how many episodes is it going to be?
I think it's 8 or 9.
So we're 3 in, and we know we still have to see Daredevil's popping in at some, or at least.
Yeah, well, you say you got Daredevil coming in, and like she even like 4. I think it's 9 episodes. Okay. According to IMDb, it's 9 episodes because it goes to August.
So I don't think we'll see much more Abomination or Hulk unless, like I said, unless they pop in towards the end.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to start putting some action into this because Daredevil's got to show up at some point through action. But even she was saying in this episode of the Fourth Wall Breaking, like, this is not the cameo show. This is my show. It's like
except for this and this and this
and this and this and this, and it's like you're doubling down on how this isn't like that much your show. I mean, it is She-Hulk, and she is in every scene, but it's one of those things where it's like maybe you don't do a cameo. Maybe you do just let her have her own episode where someone from another MCU show or something doesn't come in and take away the spotlight.
And I'm fine if it does. Like I said, I think that's kind of like when they said this won't be a cameo show. I was kind of feeling like you kind of are, but then they acknowledged that, and I kind of thought they're almost like leaning into it, like it is going to have a lot of cameos because that's the tone the show is going for. It's not, normal show. It
is, and I'm okay with that. But it's one of those things where too, it's like let her have at least one episode where it's just her. Let her have it. So that way we can say, it is her show, which I'm gonna say it is. We're not gonna say it's not, but it's like let's let her actually have a full episode where it's just her.
What I don't want it to do, because it has set this tone, it's set what it's gonna be. I don't want it to all of a sudden turn serious at some point, because I'm afraid like it kind of like Judd Apatow movies. They start off hilarious, and all of a sudden they get really dramatic.
Once you get near the second act, the end of the second act has
if you want it, this is what we're going for, let's just keep it this style.
But I mean, I do want it to get a little more serious, but I don't want it to like go like Netflix like MCU show serious, where it's like, oh wow, this got dark kind of thing. Like I don't want it to go dark, but I do think that there needs to be a little more seriousness to this, because when we do eventually get villains, if it's just like like it was when is it Tatiana or no? That's the actress's name. What
Titania
the
is her
hell?
name.
Titania.
Titania.
Yeah, like when she showed up, where it's just like, what is this? Is like Wolverine versus the Blob in X-Men Origins Wolverine. Like, this is not funny. This is just sad. And it's like, if that's what the action is going to be like the whole rest of the way, which I doubt because we're going to get Daredevil in this, it's just like, no, it has to get a little serious in here. Or just like, what, how are we going to take her seriously in any of the movies that are coming down the pipe, where she's going to eventually pop up in. But like I said, we're not completely shutting off this show by any means because it's an MCU show, but it's one of those where we both enjoyed, for the most part, the first episode outside of the CGI for Brian, but it's just progressively dropping. And I'm afraid, I'm pretty positive the Tinder episode is probably next, which that could either really be funny and really work, or it's going to be extra cringy again. And it's going to be like, man, it's going to come to episode 5 and be like, do I even want to watch this right now? Like, I'm going to watch it, but it's like, am I watching this because I want to watch it, or am I watching it because I have to watch it?
That's the point I got to with Ms. Marvel, to the point where I didn't actually watch the last 2 episodes until well after they aired, because I was like, fine, I'll watch it. I have no interest in watching it, but I will.
Yeah, I watched Ms.
Honestly,
Marvel.
I felt like that about Ms. Marvel 2 episodes in, but I at least kept up watching it.
Yeah, I felt like that too, but I still watched them within 24 hours of their release. But yeah, I don't want She-Hulk, because I love Tatiana Maslany so much, I don't want it to feel like an obligation show and feel more like a fun show.
If nothing else, this has encouraged me that I need to finally get around to watching Orphan Black.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You need to watch Orphan Black because she is amazing in that, in all of her roles in that show. But next, why don't you decide which one we're gonna go to next? Which one do you want to talk about next?
Let's go with House of the Dragon, just because that one premiered first. Let's go with that one.
All right. So, Game of Thrones. I will admit, I tried watching Game of Thrones when it first started, and I'm not ashamed to admit this. I think it's the 4th episode when Joffrey basically acts like a little bitch and blames one of the dire wolves that bit him, and then they had to kill the dire wolf. That was like, I'm fucking not. It was one of those things where I was like, I remember watching going, I don't like anyone in this show. Like, there's no one on this show that I remotely like. Peter Dinklage's like, hey, he's okay, but it's like, if I don't have anyone to root for, I have nothing to watch. So I stopped watching it. And then around like season 3, before Red Wedding and stuff like that, I went back and I want to say I got to episode 4. I was like, why am I watching? I was like, you know what? Power through it. And then obviously I grew to embrace and love the shit out of Game of Thrones. It's Game of Thrones has taken a lot of fucking heat over the last year, 2 years because of how it ended. I am not a season 8 hater. Is it not as strong as the rest of the series? Absolutely. Do I think Bran should have been the fucking king at the end of that show? Fuck no, because Bran's one of the worst characters on the show. But I'm not one of those people that are like, they should remake season 8 and blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, fuck you. I'm not. The show is what it is. Just deal with it. But when House of Dragon got released, or they were announcing like all these spinoffs, part of me was like, I don't really care. Game of Thrones is over. I don't really give a shit about the past or the Jon Snow spinoff or anything like that. But when it comes on, I will check it out. Obviously, they casted someone that I personally love in Matt Smith because I'm a huge Doctor Who fan, and he's one of my favorite doctors. So casting him as a Targaryen was at least enough to hook me into going, yeah, I'm going to check this out. And of course, dragons. But before we delve too far into it, Brian, what were your overall thoughts of Game of Thrones and then going into House of Dragon?
So Game of Thrones, I watched the first 2-3 episodes, I think, of the first season. And especially at the first episode, I'm like, oh, okay, so this is medieval porn. I get it.
Pretty much.
Like, we got
swords and dongs. Swords and dongs.
Yep. Blood and movies is how I've heard it described. But I was like, you know what? I just, it's not my style thing. I'm not into it. I'm like, you know what? I'm not, because I didn't have HBO at the time. So I was like, I think I had gone to the library and gotten like season 1 and watched it. And so was
it behind a curtain?
No. But it was, but I wasn't into it. I'm like, and there's a million other shows, kind of like that. I'm like, I just moved on. And then I obviously kept hearing about it. I'm like, yeah, maybe I should check it out at some point. And then what they did is they did before a season started. I want to say before season 4 or 5 started, they did this event at IMAX theaters where they were going to show you the last 2 episodes of the previous season on the IMAX screen. And I'm like, you know what? That'd be pretty cool to see. If I'm going to get back into it, maybe I'll do it now. So I went and I started binging the whole series up to that point. So I binged, 3-4 seasons stopping before the episode I was going to see in the theater.
Yeah.
In a very short time, like 3 or 4 seasons in I don't know, 2 weeks maybe. I don't know what it was. And I really got into the show, and I love the show. I will say though, I'm glad I waited to get into it because I actually had to look up on a computer where someone had made like a map of the characters. Because I couldn't keep track of who's who, relation to who, and this is this house, and they belong to this person's sister, and this. So I literally had like a chart.
You need like an Excel document of just
there's like a family tree with like pictures and everything that I brought up just to keep track of who everybody was and who they're affiliated with and all that kind of thing. And so I binged all the way up through there, watched the things in the theaters, but then my problem was that I had to wait week to week and season to season to see more.
That is always the worst fucking thing ever. Because I have to do with Breaking Bad too. I didn't start Breaking Bad until I think 3rd season. And then it's like you binge through it all like super quick, and then you go to week, you're like, this is the worst fucking thing ever. And it's like, yeah, that's what we've all been doing for us. Like I remember I got my
now I have to wait a whole week, and I have to wait a whole year till next season. Oh,
yeah, it was. I remember like because I got my mom hooked on Game of Thrones. And I think it was right before season 6 or 7. I got her all the way caught up. And she was like, watch the next one. I'm like, there is no next one. Like, you got to wait until next week. She's like, well, son of a bitch, Sean. I'm like, I'm sorry. And she's like,
couldn't wait
now. I was like, when's it come back? I go, in a year and a half, maybe. She's like, oh. I was like, welcome to being caught up to live TV.
So I got caught up. I watched the show as it went on. Season 8. I really like season 8 a lot. There's a lot about it I like. People didn't like that it got like a lot more action or anything. I think that's where it was headed, is a climax of this whole story.
I enjoyed it. I don't think it ended.
I do think that the season was rushed because they had fewer episodes, I don't know why they did that. I think that they started just like, whereas in previous seasons it would take them, several episodes or a season to get from place to place. This one they were teleporting across the world.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then yes,
Westeros became like Chicago instead of like the world.
Yeah, it's like, let's pick your spawn point. Okay, there.
Yes.
And yes, Bran should not have been king at the end. But those things aside, I really enjoyed season 8. I don't see why people hated it so much, but more power to them. Whatever.
It was one of those things where I think Bran and then Cersei, the way she died, is like, that's how we're gonna kill Cersei. Like after all the shit she did, that's the way she goes out. It was just one of those things like people just weren't and that's the other thing too. After season 6, they didn't have the blueprint of the books anymore. Or it was after 5 or 6, I can't remember. So it was like they were kind of just doing their own thing. And whenever the hell he finishes those books, people are gonna go, let's go back and redo Game of Thrones. It's like, no, you don't get to do that. You just get to go read those. You just have to actually go read them now and see where the story ends, because that's the way it is. But what were your thoughts coming into House of Dragon?
So then Game of Thrones ended, and I was fine with it. I would have liked to see more Game of Thrones, but it ended, and like, fine, I get it.
Yeah.
And then I hear they're going to do these spin-offs, and I know they had like 3 potential things they were doing, and one of them I think starred Naomi Watts, and they actually filmed a pilot, but then they decided not to pick that one up, so they decided to go with this one instead. And I'm as much as I want to spend more time in the Game of Thrones world, I was very hesitant on this because spin-offs and prequels and things in TV rarely work. I mean, everything from Aftermath to Joey from Friends,
Joey.
That's what I'm saying. That you can have the biggest hit show, but it doesn't mean that your spin-off's going to be good.
There's a handful of them that actually work.
And my thing is, if they had decided, okay, we're going to do a spin-off show and we're going to follow some of these characters that you grew to love, and it won't be the whole Game of Thrones, but you'll follow them on a whole separate thing. That's where I kind of would have liked it to go. But they said, oh, we're going to a prequel. It's like, was it 200 years before?
I think it's 172, I think is what it said on the beginning of the first episode.
Nerd.
I pay attention. It might be 175. I know it's at least 170.
I was rounding. So 200-ish years. before that, and I'm like,
that's a lifetime for a lot of people in Westeros.
okay, and it's focusing on the Targaryens, who it's like, yeah, they've kind of been the blandest people. I mean, whatever. But I'm like, I'll check it out. Matt Smith did nothing for me. I have not been a Doctor Who watcher. Now, I don't have anything against Matt Smith. I have not been a Doctor Who watcher, but people rave about him. But whenever I've seen him pop up in something, I'm like, really? What's the big deal about this guy? Because I've seen, I'm seeing him in, Last Night in Soho and things like this, or Morbius. Which actually, I would say Morbius, he was having fun in that movie. He knew the movie he was in.
Terminator Genesis.
Yeah, but Terminator Genesis, which was awful.
He's in like 4 scenes tops, but yeah.
But right, he's barely in it. But clearly he was meant to be in more that never happened after that. But I'm like, I don't see what the big deal is. And from what I understand, people like Matt Smith, a lot of what they like about it is his personality and his humor. And I'm like, this is clearly not a humor role in this show. So I'm like, is he really going to be the appeal of it? I don't know. But he wasn't something off-putting for me. It just wasn't a draw. Honestly, there wasn't a draw in the cast for me because most of them I've never heard of. And the ones I have, the closest thing to a draw for me would be Olivia Cook. And I don't know her from a whole lot.
Was it Reese Ifans?
Reese Ifans.
Brian, your dog is killing me right now because it looks like you have a tail. It's wacky.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, it's funny. It's just like it looks like as you're talking, you're getting excited.
Actually, I'm gonna let him out of the room. He's been begging to go out for about 10 minutes.
I'm leaving this in, by the way, because that's just fucking. That's why I was giggling while you were talking because I
started wagging my tail.
Yeah.
No. So I mean, honestly, I went into this with very little
expectation or excitement.
No excitement at all. I mean, I was interested just because if it was a show by itself, I probably wouldn't have cared about it. As a Game of Thrones spinoff, I'm like, you know what? I'll at least check it out. But I will say I didn't have any excitement for it. And they showed the trailer for it. And even when I watched the trailer, I'm kind of like, okay. So that's where I was going into it.
I agree. The trailer didn't really do much for me, except for me going, Matt Smith with blonde hair, like and dragons, cool. But yeah, I went in with little to no expectations because once again, I agree. The Targaryens, I mean, all you really had in Game of Thrones was Dany and her douchebag brother. I can't remember what her brother's name was, but that's all you really had. And then technically Jon. But yeah, and so going into the episode, I'm like I in a good way. Like I remember, like I think it was when Daemon, with the yellow, what do they call them? Not yellow jackets, but what do they call the yellow? His army. They call them the gold capes or yellow capes or whatever. When they go and they basically attack King's Landing and basically do what they do, I'm like, okay, this is actually starting to feel like Game of Thrones again. Like, all right, okay, I'm now paying full attention to what I'm watching now. And by the end of that first episode, like I loved the way these characters were. I really enjoyed Shocker. I love Matt Smith as Daemon because I love he's very much a Jaime character, which clearly that's what he's trying to be. He's Jaime. But he's this cocky jackass, but he has so much love and appreciation for his brother Viserys and is it Rhaenyra? Yeah. He loves his family, and then that was some of the best moments in the first 2 episodes is when he's talking to Rhaenyra, is because you're seeing him as like he's not trying to pull up this facade of Daemon Targaryen. He was just like, he's talking to her like an uncle, right? Yeah, he's the uncle.
Yes.
Yeah. Like they're talking very lovingly together and not in the creepy way that Game of Thrones loves to play it. And I really enjoyed that. And I love
creepiness. We'll get to that.
We'll get to the creepy. We will definitely get to the creepiness of it. But I really love it. And I love his dragon. I don't remember the dragon's name offhand, but I love the red, like big ass dragon that he has. But one thing I also really enjoyed as well is I love Paddy Considine. Is it Considine or Considine? Considine as King Viserys, because his character, like he comes off like a normal kind of king, and then you have this story with him and his pregnant wife, and a lot of people, like when you get to that very, very hard to watch scene of the C-section, And it's like, what an asshole. What about, like, no, like, you're watching this wrong. Like, he's basically being told, you're going to lose both of them. If we do this, we can at least probably save the child. And you're seeing, he's not just like, oh, fucking do it. I don't care about my wife. No, like, you're seeing the torture he's running through on this, of, like, him knowing that he's basically killing his wife, the woman he loves, because he actually loves her. It's not like you're just my queen, you know, blah, blah, blah. No, it's like, no, there's actual love here between these two characters. And then that moment where they do pour down, and you're seeing the betrayal in her eyes, and it's breaking his heart that he's doing this. And it all ends up being for naught because the fucking baby dies, which is the ultimate Game of Thrones. Fuck you. That's what you know you're watching Game of Thrones, is when the baby died anyway.
But again, they were both going to die anyway if you didn't at least try.
Exactly. And
I've heard people complain about, like, oh, well, he should have told her what was going on and given her the choice. Like, she would have said, try to save the baby at least.
I don't know, because I think that scene earlier in the film, she's like, this is my last one. I've dealt with too many of this. I think she maybe. I think right, but you're gonna die anyway.
It was never a matter of we can save her. It was a matter of they're both going to die, or you can try and save the baby.
And I think a lot of people think that it was an either-or situation, and he chose the baby over her. It's like, that was never an option. She was going to die regardless.
It's not like they can cut the baby out and not kill her. Not in this day and age. And they can't just let her give birth to her because that was going to kill her anyway. So he made a choice. And then they're like, well, and he didn't tell her what was going on. It's like, I think that was the merciful thing to do. He did not tell her what was about to happen, so she didn't have to live in terror. I mean, yes, she felt the pain and stuff, but at least he tried to.
They could have put her to sleep. They could have at least like give her
something. Though? They said they'd given her as much of the milk of whatever as they could.
Yeah, but if she's gonna die anyway, they could have just straight knocked her ass out.
Something. Well, they were afraid it was going to affect the baby. I think they said we gave her as much of the milk of the poppy or something like that as we can without harming the baby.
Okay, so that's why they said they couldn't knock her out. But it was like that
was again, maybe that would be her choice. Like I can do this in pain, or I can die, but then the baby dies. I don't know. So that whole thing, yeah. But my thing is, I've heard people complain about, like, it was so intense and they should have had warnings before. Like, this is Game of Thrones.
Fucking Game of Thrones.
That's your warning. Far more bloody as horrible things than this. Just because childbirth is something that is real doesn't mean that suddenly, you should have warnings to warn people about this. Like, you shouldn't be watching the show if that's going to bother you.
Here's your warning. It's Game of fucking Thrones. Yeah. That's your warning. You don't need anything else. If you don't know what you're walking into when you're watching a Game of Thrones show, then you never fucking watch Game of Thrones.
Well, why don't you throw somebody's dong? What?
That's like going into like a freaking like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street going, oh, why is there boobies and murder? That's what? Shut the fuck up and get out of here. Yeah. It's Game of Thrones. What the fuck did you expect? When Daemon cuts off that dude's dick, yeah, that's fucking Game of Thrones for you. What? Come on. Like, we've seen this multiple times already. But I love the series character because when he does lose both kids, or not both kids, when he loses his kid and his wife, you're seeing this heartbroken guy. And I love that scene when his committee's like trying to rush him through, and he's like, my fucking child and my wife just died. Like, fuck off. You know, guys, like, good.
And I get it. It's like, I understand like both sides of it, because yes, like, we need to establish a line of succession, because if something happens to you, you know,
everyone's thinking that Damon's going to kill him.
Right, but so I understand that they're completely in the right. We need to have a set line of succession. Yeah, unless you want to go to Daemon, you need to figure something out. But at the same time, you understand his appeal of, like, my wife and child just died. And, like, I get it, but
then we go to episode 2 with his character, and he's put in this situation where it's like, once again, people who are not really paying attention to the show are constantly putting Viserys in this villain role. It's like, he's not. In terms of a king, he's forced kind of onto Alicent, because Otto is bringing her in. This is the first girl outside of maybe prostitutes and hookers they probably would have sent him that is showing him compassion.
Oh, that was totally a power play by Otto.
Oh, it's 100% a power play.
He's like, look, he said, go and comfort him.
Go and put on your wife's or your mom's dress and stuff like that. Oh, it's a total power move.
It's totally. I want him to hook up with you so I can be
exactly. Like, he's the little finger of the show, and if anyone hasn't figured that out yet, you're not watching it closely enough. Yeah. But you're putting him in this situation where you have her, you know, and she's 15, which by today's standards is very, very bad. By Game of Thrones standards, that's
yeah. We thought that was creepy.
Yeah, we thought that was okay, but and he's not even being like creepy with her. He's just talks to her. Like, he's not forcing himself on her, at least not that we haven't seen.
Well, no,
He's
he
not
is
forcing
even.
himself.
I don't think at that point. I don't think he's even looking at it from that angle. It's creepy.
No.
It's creepy in the way that Otto is sending it to him. That's like
Exactly. He's
interesting.
Viserys at least.
But from his
how
point, he's just like, oh, my niece is coming in to keep me company.
Exactly. He's
Or not
just
niece,
looking at her as
Sorry.
thank you for being this person that I can actually talk to
Yeah.
about this. And then you have this I'm blanking on the group or the character. It's Valerian, right? The Valerians? The other group that's trying to get him to marry.
Oh yeah, Valerian, yeah.
Yeah, Valerian. Then you have this, which in a king's mindset, this is the correct move. You should power these families, make your basically your kingdom stronger. But then you meet the daughter, and it's like
the way they do it. Like, we think you should hook up with our daughter because
we're in the mindset that she's of the same age,
and we're like, okay, it's creepy, but fine. It's medieval times or this world's equivalent to medieval times.
Yeah,
fine, I get it. They cut to that scene, and everybody has that same moment of like, wait,
whoa,
they're not talking about her, are they?
Yeah, and then she has the thing like,
about children. You're like, oh, and then but then they one up themselves. They said, what did your mother tell you? That I wouldn't have to bed you till I'm 14. Oh,
yeah, and I'm just like, you're sitting there going, this is uncomfortable, but it's once again, it's Game of Thrones. What the fuck did you think you were signed up for?
I love that his reaction was the same thing. It's like she says that, and he's just like,
oh. This is even he's like, no, kind of thing. But they're pushing him towards that, and he's got Allison over here. So when it comes down to at the very end of the episode, it's like, who do you choose? Do you choose love and Allison, someone who's shown you compassion and and someone that you can actually be yourself around, or you choose this child and make the kingdom stronger? Which at that time, like I said, they're in a time of peace. No one's coming at him. So he doesn't have to think in that mindset because they're not in war times. Now, had they been attacked or had they been getting attacked, we're not talking about the crab guy, maybe his mind would have maybe went that way more. But in where they're at in the film, Daemon is the one person that is the biggest kind of heel to him. And Daemon, in his eyes, will never hurt Viserys. So he chooses love. But then by doing that, you're now potentially making an enemy out of Rhaenyra.
Which I don't get. I feel like the kingdoms should already be kind of tied together because it's his cousin, right? The queen who never was.
Yeah.
And her husband is the Valerian. Like, I would think that there'd already be some connection between. Now, granted, she obviously wanted to be queen and she wasn't. He got it instead, but they're still family. So I would think that they're in
hindsight,
I would think their two kingdoms would still be somewhat connected, but now he's made a villain out of him.
But I've never said I never thought I would ever say I love the fucking politics of a Game of Thrones show right now, because the way this is shit, I'm like, this is fucking.
Honestly, you're talking about the moment that grabbed you was when that battle scene with Daemon and his army. The scene that grabbed me was actually kind of that opening narration or whatever it was, where they were like talking about there's the king's ceremony. She should have been it, but he got it instead. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be the politics of Game of Thrones. That's what this show is going to be a lot about.
Well, I said the first moment that made me feel like this is Game of Thrones was when Daemon attacked.
See, that was the moment for me. Is when they basically were figuring out who was going to be.
But I mean, I'm loving Rhys Ifans as Otto. I love him and Matt Smith's back and forth. Like, I love that moment in episode 2 where they're on the bridge and he's like, he pulls her. It's like, this will kill you. Yeah, but it'll kill you too. So I'm okay with it, kind of thing. Like, I love that. And then Rhaenyra comes in like a badass, just like a Jaws through the clouds, and just like, I'm here. Like, princess, you should be a bitch. Shut up. We're talking. You want to kill me? Fucking do it.
Just so you know, this thing is very protective of me.
Yeah, you got yours. I've got mine. You want to kill me? You love me. You want to kill me? Fucking do it right now. We'll be done with this. Here's the egg. And it's like, I fucking love the dialogue of the show. It's working so well. And they're not having to go, like they are, but they're not having to go that extra Game of Thrones echelon yet to say, like, to get you to watch, we have to do this. No, just this story of these characters right now, I am enthralled in what I'm seeing, and I'm loving the world that we're in now. And then you got this crab guy that I'm like, okay, that's interesting.
I think they're teasing him just the right amount.
It's like, are these our White Walkers in this world, or is it just like a a pirate guy we're going to be dealing with as the villain potentially in this new season. But I also love that because of the decisions of Viserys, which I think we all think in terms of like ewness, he made the right decision. But in terms of the Game of Thrones, he made the wrong decision. And then we see Daemon potentially with Valerian at the end of the episode potentially teaming up. But once again, it's one of those things where it's like, how far will Daemon go? Because Daemon won't, at least right now, Daemon ain't going to turn on Viserys. He's not going to. Like, he loves his brother. Just like, I love that one moment when Valerian is talking back.
Daemon's never going to...
What I want. You can't.
Yeah, I feel like Daemon's never going to, like, kill his brother or harm his brother. But I think he will have no qualms about killing whoever else is appointed the heir so that he can have it instead.
Except for Rhaenyra. He won't touch Rhaenyra. If he did, he would have done it already.
Maybe.
But yeah, but here's my main. Well, let's talk about Rhaenyra. I don't want to leave her out. She's technically the main character of the show. I love this actress, Millie Alcott. I think I was worried about her coming into the episodes. I'm like, I don't know if she's gonna be that great.
Just looking at her, and even her first lines, I'm like, man, this girl is bland as hell. That's my thought.
Yeah, but as it grew, she got better. She like even Amelia Clark as Dany in the first episodes of Game of Thrones, she's bland as hell, and she grew into this character and became one of the best parts of Game of Thrones. And Rhaenyra, she's doing, or at least Millie Alcott as Rhaenyra, she's growing on me. Everything she's doing, just being this kind of, she seems to be the one person that's actually using common fucking sense in this world. Like, you know, you sure you want to pick this guy? Yeah, I'm gonna pick the one fucking person who's actually seen battle to protect us. Yes. You know, or hey, we have dragons. Why don't we send the dragons after the crab guy? And everyone's like, oh, shut the fuck up, girl. You know, but it's like, I love her performance. Here's my worry, and I talked about this with you before we decided we were gonna do the show. They're gonna do a time jump. Now, it's a double-sided coin. I want the time jump because I want Olivia Cook in the show, even though the actress who plays young Alicent, Emily Carey, she's fine. I think she's great. But I don't want to go back forth, but I also don't want to lose these two actresses who are doing a really good job, but I really want Olivia Cook.
The one thing I'm curious about is because like Game of Thrones never did these time jumps like this.
No.
And so it's like the fact they did this one, I was half through the episode before I realized that episode 2 took 6 months after the first one. I'm like, oh.
Yeah, it was that drop of dialogue. Yeah. Like she's only been gone half a year. It's like, oh shit, we're 6 months ahead.
I'm like, I thought this was like next week, maybe, you know?
Yeah.
But so that we figured that out. And now we don't know when it's going to happen. But at some point they're going to jump forward to where it's Olivia Cook and Emma Darcy is be playing Rhaenyra. And so it's like, but you're right. Like I want to see these younger people too. Now I understand you want to progress the story forward, but at the same time, it's like
I don't want to lose these actresses.
You just, when things are the moving pieces in the show are all over the place. So can you jump that far without saying, "Whoa, we probably missed a lot of stuff"? I can't imagine everything just stayed standard until these people are this age. Yeah, the other question was, is it going to be back and forth?
I don't know if that'll work for Game of Thrones.
Is it going to be jump, or is it going to be like you see what happened here, then it kind of flashes back to here, kind of the stories intertwined kind of thing? And I could see them doing that. There are ways that could work. I don't know if they will or not, but if they don't, it'd be a shame to lose these young actresses.
Yeah, because I think they're both killing it right now. Like there's like at the start, they were both kind of finding their footing, but by the end of the first episode and then definitely episode 2, I feel like both actresses were doing a great job. And I love Olivia Cook. You do too. But it's like getting her on the show means we're going to potentially lose them, and I don't want to lose them. Now, like I said, I don't think Game of Thrones is going to do the back forth. I feel because I just don't know how story wise that's gonna flow. I feel like
on the plus side, Lena Valerian will be old enough to bed the king now.
That's very true. But actually, I think the actual actress is like, oh no, I was thinking of Lord of the Rings girl. She is 19 in real life, so technically she's of age. But
which one, Alicent or
Alicent, young Alicent?
Oh, I was talking about the 12-year-old. Well, after the time jump, she'll be
that's very true. She would be. Wouldn't it be the thing that she ends up being the one that kills Viserys? She's like, you didn't pick me, kind of thing. But yeah, I'm loving what we're getting right now, but I'm worried. because of the time jump. I'm legitimately worried about what's going to happen. Now, I should trust them because it's Game of
honestly,
Thrones.
I'm not worried at all. This show is actually, it's caught my interest and intrigued me more than I expected it to.
Well,
I'm very interested to see where it goes from here, and I'm actually not worried at all. I'm disappointed is the wrong word. I regret that you have to lose 2 good actresses to move on to the next stage, but I'm not worried about where the story is going. I trust them.
Yeah, I'm not worried that the show's not going to be good because that's at this point I know the show's going to be great. What I'm worried about is when Olivia Cooke and Emma D'Arcy come in, that I'm not going, oh, I missed the younger ones. And then I'm going, apples to oranges between them, and then it makes it feel less than. Because the reason why I don't think the time jump thing will work is because they're the only ones that are getting older. So you have a scene with young one with like Otto and Viserys and all them and Daemon, and then all of a sudden the next scene they're older and it's them still fucking with Daemon and all them. It's like you're gonna get the average watcher confused. They're gonna feel like 2 separate characters, and that's why I feel like it's gonna be very hard for them to do the back forth because of that. And that's why I'm worried that we're just going to get Emma D'Arcy and Olivia Cooke, and we're going to.
That's more likely what's going to happen.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna be like, oh, but I miss them. Like, I'm not loving this new Rhaenyra. I'm not really. I'm sure I'll love Olivia Cooke. I love Olivia Cooke. It's mainly Emma D'Arcy that I'm like worried about, and I haven't seen her in anything, so it's hard for me to like really like judge her when I haven't seen her do anything. But I just really like Millie Alcott so much that I'm so worried I'm not going to enjoy her as much. But nonetheless, House of Dragon has exceeded my expectations. A lot of people were actually pissed off that they played the Game of Thrones theme for the credits. And it's like come up with your own thing. It's Game of Thrones. I'm okay with that being like the fucking Avengers theme song. Like, you're in the Game of Thrones world, here's the Game of Thrones song. Like, I'm okay with that. If they come up with their own thing, that's
to me,
fine.
that's like saying in the Star Wars prequels, they shouldn't have had the Star Wars.
Exactly. It's like, no, it's fucking Star Wars.
Yes, they're going to have their own individual themes and music and stuff, but there is the Game of Thrones theme.
Yeah. I'm fine with that. Like, when I heard that, I got happy. I got excited because I love that. The credits, I'm still kind of confused on. It's not like Game of Thrones where it was like Westeros and you're seeing all the places. Like, I really didn't understand this one, but then again, I think when we first saw
this felt to me like the weird reference, the opening credits of Sweeney Todd, the Tim Burton version, just following the trail of blood.
Yeah. It is very much a pool, like a river of blood, and it's like hitting these little quadrants and like lifting, but it's not like the world of Westeros. So it's like I'm not quite sure what's going on. I don't hate what I'm seeing, but I'm not loving it. But I am loving the music being back because I missed that Game of Thrones theme. Yep. Anything else you want to add for House of Dragon before we jump over to Rings of Power?
No. Right, cool. House of the Dragon, by the way.
Oh, did I leave out the the?
Yeah. That's okay. For the first week, I kept calling it House of Dragons, and finally, I'm like, I don't think that's right. So I looked it up.
Like,
House of the Dragon.
Multiple fucking dragons in the show, so like theory.
But the House of the Dragon, like sigils, is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Whenever I read it out, I always have to go, is it the? It is the. All right, so now we're gonna go Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Now you actually got to see this in theaters a day early. I had to watch it at home on my awful 4K TV with no surround sound. But this is another show. I think we were at a running theme. All 3 of these shows, we were not crazy about the trailers. I went back and rewatched all the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit before this came out, so I could like at least be in the mindset of the world. And so I had a, kind of like, I was prepared for it. I was excited for it. But not because of the trailers. The trailers really did nothing for me because, I mean, it's a bunch of no-name actors, which that's fine. I actually prefer a bunch of no-namers instead of like, oh, here's Luke Evans again or something like that. It's like, I don't know. I know those people kind of thing. But I'll let you go first because you watched this first before me, so you had like a full day of like thought process before.
Yeah. So going into this, Lord of the Rings movies, I really like. I think the Lord of the Rings movies are excellent movies. I don't love them the way some people do, and I could not tell you most of the locations and people's names outside the main few characters, things like that, because it's just complicated as hell. The Hobbit movies,
I will say that the Hobbit movies are better now on rewatch. Now that it's been past the stigma,
it still should have been like a movie, maybe 2.
If you still gave me $1 million to name all the dwarves, I couldn't do it.
No,
Still couldn't do it.
I might be able to name you like.
And I just watched all 3 movies, like the extended cuts.
Yeah.
I still could not tell you all the names.
So that's an ongoing thing. I will tell you, I will be referring to this a lot because even after watching these first 2 episodes, outside of Galadriel and Elrond, I remember maybe 3 characters' names. There's some I have to look up because even during the movie.
I asked you after you came back. I was like, "So how was it?" You're like, "I was like, you want to talk about it?" He's like, "I don't." You're like, "I don't know." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Cause I still think of there's that one and
it's
then
like
that one,
the black elf, the villager girl, that dude on the boat."
And my response was, "How's that different from the Hobbit?" And you're like,
"It's not. It's not."
True.
Yeah. So going into this, I had no enthusiasm. Obviously, I was going to watch it. I had zero enthusiasm for the show. I didn't watch the trailer until a week before I saw the show. I knew they were out, but I'm like, I'm not going to watch the trailer. I'm just check it out and see because I have no feelings either way about the show. And so, but then they had this thing where they were going to show the first 2 episodes, one night event in some theaters, and it turns out the only one in my state happens to be, one like 35 minutes to me. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to that. Plus, you get $10 a free concession voucher with it too. And my friend bailed on me, so I got $20 worth of theater food. There you go.
I love that both Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings you've hooked into because you had to go see it in the theater first. That's such a Brian move.
Well, I would have watched the show anyway. I was going to watch the show.
Okay, I didn't know if you were actually going to give it a shot without it.
But I was like, I can go see this screen. I can go see it. You get to see it early. You get to see it on the big screen. I'm like, you know what? I'll check it out. Get free food. Sure, why not? So I went to this event, and I will say the show looks amazing. I think
each episode's like $60 million.
So much has been made about how it's the most expensive TV show ever made and all those things like this. And I get and sure, the money's on screen. It looks like each episode looks like a full feature film.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really see any major flaws. I don't see like She-Hulk level CGI or anything like that. But it looks great, and I've been telling people. Obviously, you won't be able to see it on the theater now, but see it, watch on the biggest screen you can. Watch it on your 4K TV. Don't be one of these people that watch it on your phone or on your tablet.
If you watch this or House of the Dragon on your phone, I might
don't want to know you.
Have to hesitate to not slap you in the face.
Yeah,
unless you're watching a rewatch of it. If you're watching a rewatch of it, it's fine. But if your first time watching these is on your phone, I want to hit you.
Yeah. So it looks beautiful, but what thing is, did I care about the story? And honestly, I'm watching this, and at the beginning, I'm kind of like, okay, whatever. As the episodes go on, I got more and more interested. I mean, obviously, we're being introduced to characters, but then you kind of start to slowly understand the relationships to the characters, things like that. And I'll just do very broad strokes right now. And having watched at the end of the first 2 episodes, I'm like, okay, it's not like my favorite show of all time or anything at this point. But I am interested enough. I am impressed enough that I'm going to keep watching and see where it goes. I enjoyed what I saw, and I'm at least hooked for now.
Yeah, I am one of the people who do love Lord of the Rings. Smeagol's right over here in my shirt. Smeagol got me through college. Let's just say that. Smeagol got me through college quite a bit. And what I mean by that, and you already know this, like I was in broadcast journalism, and I did TV production and radio production, and I had to do the Smeagol voice for so many things, whether it was a radio broadcast, Hobbit Love, I did that, where I just talked like Smeagol and had people call in and do basically.
I've never heard this story, by the way.
I thought I told you about this.
Not this one.
No,
nope.
I had to run the college radio thing for like a few weeks, and I had to do like the midnight to 4 a.m. thing. And there was you basically just do whatever as long as you played the music and you didn't do anything too bad like cussing nonstop. You can kind of do whatever you want. And I really was like, I don't know what to do. I was like, I don't know what to do with my hands, kind of thing. And I was like, you know what? I can do the Smeagol voice. I'm gonna be funny with this because no one's gonna call me. And I did Hobbit Love, and I basically did the entire show talking like Smeagol. And I was like, call in about your personal lives, issues, all this kind of stuff. And I
love line with Smeagol.
It basically is what it was, and it was funny. It was fun. I'd have like girls calling in about their boyfriends not being able to satisfy them, and me being like, "It's okay. Tell me more why your boyfriend isn't able to pleasure you." And I do that, and just do that for like a few hours, like every other night, and it was fucking hilarious. It was fun. And so, like I said, Smeagol got me through college because I always had to bring that voice up in some form or matter. And I So I love Game of Thrones. I love Lord of the Rings, and The Hobbit. Like I said, I appreciate The Hobbit more now on rewatch than I did back when it came out. I still don't think it's far, far less superior than Lord of the Rings, because Lord of the Rings to me is three of the best films in movie history in my eyes. But yeah, when I heard they're making a movie or a new show for it, I was like, oh, okay, I'll watch it. But I mean, Hobbit didn't really make me fall in love with it. Like, I love Lord of the Rings because I love these characters: Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Frodo, Sam, all of them. And Hobbit was like, yeah, Bilbo's great, and there's Gandalf, but I didn't really care about any of the Hobbits. So why is a show that's like over 1,000 years earlier gonna really hook me in with what I loved about Lord of the Rings? So, and I saw the first trailer, and it's like, it looks good. It looks good. The orcs are not CGI orcs; they're actual people. So like, cool, but like, it's not gripping me or grabbing me. But I was still excited to see it because it's Lord of the Rings. And yes, this looks fucking amazing. There were so many times while I was watching it, especially when they go enter the Dwarf Kingdom, and I was just like, holy shit, this looks fucking amazing. And there's so many scenes, and then the scene.
What you can see it on XD screen now, huh?
And then the moment near the end of the first episode where they're going to, is it the Undying Lands? Is that where they were going?
I don't know what they call it, but yeah.
Isn't that where Frodo and them went at the end of Return of the King?
I believe so.
Okay, I have questions about that, and this is, like I said, I never read the book.
I have questions too.
Is that like heaven? Do they die going through there? Is it like a veil that kills you?
That's what I'm talking about. If that's like the words the afterlife or something, I don't know. But
I know there's going to be people who are going to be like, actually, this is what it is. That's fine. Cool. Let us know. But I'm so like, oh, cool. Y'all are going there. Cool. So did you just send me off to my death? Like, I don't understand. Like, we're not allowed to come back. So we die. Basically.
Well, I think it's also before I realized they were going off to whatever afterlife, whatever. I thought they were just being sent off to like some place like you get to go live at Rivendell or whatever it is.
Yeah.
When they're on the boat, and I realized they're all just like standing there the entire time. Were they just going to stand in formation the entire days long?
They're starting to be undressed and everything. It's like,
but like
it feels like you're going to die, and you're coming in.
They're just standing there in formation on the boat for who knows how many days this journey was, and like really just going to stand and pose.
Well, they're elves. Days for them is like hours.
I guess, yeah. Well, yeah, because like talk about with Durin, how you like 20 years passed for you it's a blink of the eye.
We'll get to that a little bit. We're definitely gonna get to that.
But yeah, I kind of thought the same thing. I'm like, is he going to the afterlife or whatever? Like,
yeah, if anyone wants to like let us know, is that basically them dying and going to basically the afterlife, heaven?
Think of it as like Cats, where you get to move on to the next.
Oh God, what's it called? I can't remember what it's called. And I'm actually glad I don't remember what that's called, because Cats is so fucking horrible. But yeah, I was like, okay, cool. So like, Galadriel did all this shit. You basically just like go die. It's like we're done dealing with you. Go die, kind of thing. But even that scene was insanely beautiful. Like watching this like heavenly light of them going through, and you're watching her kind of almost like you fucking actually doing this kind of deal. But it looks great. There was not a single shot in these first two episodes I was like, that could have been done better. You can't, not with that budget. I think they said like the series itself is $250 million more than what it was to make Lord of the Rings.
Amazon paid $250 million for the rights alone to make a show.
But the budget,
and then they paid like $600 million to make the show.
But the show is $250 million more than it would cost to actually make, which is like, what? But anyway. So yeah, you have that budget. It better look good. But my main thing that I was kind of worried about, and like I said, brushstrokes as well, is the first episode is such a exposition dump, which
it absolutely is complete setup because you don't know who these people are.
Here's the thing: there's good exposition dump, and there's bad exposition dump. Lord of the Rings, even The Matrix, is able to do huge exposition dumps, but are developing characters as the exposition dump is happening. And then there's bad exposition dump where they're just spewing off a whole bunch of shit. And it's like, all right, cool. Thanks for the study session. I still don't know what the fuck's going on.
I always refer to the Da Vinci Code, where basically the entire movie is just exposition dump.
It's like, thanks, Tom Hanks. I really don't remember what your character's name is, nor do I care. And with Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, it's like, okay, cool. I know who Galadriel is because we've seen her in, Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and we know who Elrond is because it's Hugo Weaving, even though he looks like Neil Patrick Harris now.
He does, absolutely does.
He does look like Neil Patrick Harris. So, like, I know these two. I don't know who anyone else is, rightfully so. It's 1,000 years in the past. But as this first episode goes, it's beautiful. I don't hate the world that I'm learning about, but I'm also not really caring about any of these characters. Galadriel's getting some character development because of her brother and stuff like that. I was like, okay, I know her motivation, but like Nori and the Harfoots, which I'm guessing is taking place for hobbits in the show.
They eventually become the hobbits, is my understanding.
Yeah, it's like they're basically hobbits. And you've got the I don't want to call him the Black Elf because that's so not cool. Arendir, I think is his name.
Yeah.
You have him and is it Bronwyn, which are basically Arwen and Aragorn in this one. And then you've got Poppy and Nori, who are basically Sam and Frodo. So you're getting these characters like, okay, you're basically the substitute for this, and this. That's fine. But do I care about these characters? And by the end of the first episode, I knew the world we were in, kind of. I still am kind of confused on the world a little bit. But do I give a shit about these characters other than that they look great on screen? And that was the problem after the first episode. I was like, it's Lord of the Rings. I'm going to watch it, but I'm not like, ooh, here comes blank. It's like, I didn't feel that. Now by episode 2 though, they weren't expositioning anymore. They're like, now let's actually fucking do some character development. And by the end of the second episode, I'm like, all right, cool. I like this character. I like this character. I like this, because there are scenes that we are finally, and I'll go a little bit further into it once we get past the break. Then I was like, great. I know your motivations. I know your why. I know what you're doing. I know why you're doing it. I believe your intentions. Now I know how I can react to your character. Cool. Great. First episode doesn't do that. Second episode does. And so now going into the third episode, I'm like, all right, now I'm ready. But the problem you're going to run into with a lot of people, there's two things. One, they can't remove this from Lord of the Rings. There are a lot of people, and I was reading this, and this is what was enraging me because of how just people just can't. This is why Star Wars will never get out of the Skywalker saga, is because people think the stranger is Gandalf. No, it's fucking not Gandalf. This is 1,000 years before Gandalf. There are other people in this world. You don't have to keep connecting it to the Lord of the Rings. It's 1,000 years prior. This is why we'll never get Knights of the Old Republic, because they just cannot remove people from Skywalker stuff. And it's right. It came out right with Game of Thrones, and you've got Game of Thrones, and they're gonna be like you got basically kids version kind of with Lord of the Rings, because it's never gonna go as dark as Game of Thrones.
Let's call it kids. Let's call it family friendly.
you got PG-13 and you got rated R, and you're gonna constantly put that. But like in terms of story, House of the Dragon has developed their characters 1,000 times better so far. Lord of the Rings looks better, but not by that much. But in terms of the story, the characters, and if I have to choose, if I can only watch one, I'm going to watch House of the Dragon. Could that change through the season? Potentially. And it could be because of the time jump. But that's where we're at right now. Like by the end of the 2 episodes, I enjoyed it. I wasn't like in love with it like I was with House of the Dragon. But it was still solid. But that first episode is a lot of just sitting there and going, do I need to start taking notes?
Well, I feel like that's why they dropped 2 episodes at once.
Oh, that's 100% why.
Because the first episode, I mean, I did not dislike the first episode at all.
I didn't dislike it either. I just didn't.
But it was just introducing a lot of characters and kind of getting to know, okay, this is who this person is. They live here. They belong with this group, that kind of thing. And I was totally okay with that. And if that had been the whole just the first episode, you'd have been like, okay, but where's it going? So, but then they dropped 2 at once, because yes, in 2 you get to know more about their motivations and relationships and kind of, okay, this is where the show's going. But at the same time, you could not do that second episode without the first episode. You can't be like, oh, the first episode's kind of slow, so just skip that one and watch 2. No, you can't do that.
No, you absolutely can't.
You needed that first episode to be able to fully explore the second episode. So I think that's why they released 2 at once, which is a very smart idea.
I think they just could have maybe done a better job of meshing them together a little better, so that way it doesn't feel so.
Let me ask you this: if this had been released not as a 2 separate episodes, but as a 1 like hour and a half, hour 45-minute long episode, like to premiere, would you have felt differently?
It depends on how they did the story. If it was just episode 1, the way they did episode 1, I would have been like, basically what I said. It's Lord of the Rings. I'm gonna watch it.
No, I mean if episodes 1 and 2 were combined and released as a premiere movie instead of as considered 2 separate episodes, I think people would have been a lot more forgiving. But instead, they look at them individually and say, "This one wasn't as good as this one." No, you needed one to get 2. So yeah.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. Where Game of Thrones didn't do that. Game of Thrones was like, this is the first episode, but they set the table up in an hour that it took Lord of the Rings almost 2.5 hours to do.
Well, and part of that is because, like the movies, Lord of the Rings likes to spend a lot of time going, look at our pretty landscape.
Well, that and the other thing that Lord of the Rings has to do, the Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon doesn't have to do, is Lord of the Rings is doing Game of Thrones, where it's like, you're off here, you're off here, you're off here, you're off here. We're spreading all around Middle Earth. Whereas House of the Dragon is King's Landing, for the most part, just King's Landing, and then maybe a little bit Dragonstone, but mainly King's Landing. They're not having to go all over the place. So you're staying tight in terms of your characters. Whereas with Lord of the Rings, you've got the Harfoots, you've got the elves, you've got man, you've got all the it's spreading itself, which that's fine. I'm totally okay with that. But then you're going to start getting into those situations like with Game of Thrones, where it's like, man, we had like 20 minutes with the Harfoots, but we only had like 5 minutes with Galadriel this episode. It's like, ugh. Yeah, it's one of those things where you're going to say though, at some point.
I will say though, so far at least, I don't think. I'm not sure. I might be forgetting something. I don't think that there's like, there's like different storylines going on with different characters. Yeah. I don't think there's any one who I'm just like, oh, I don't care about the storyline. I just want to skip over it.
No, by the end of episode 2, no.
Yeah, I'm invested in the Harfoots. I like Nori in them. I'm very curious to see where that section's going. The Strangers, like I hope they don't drag that mystery out too long. It's like let's move that story along a little bit, please. But I'm still very interested in that story. I really like the Arondir and Bronwyn. I like that whole relationship, which I was afraid that I was gonna be like, oh, this is the love story, but I actually totally buy into that.
I mean, I'm not really loving Theo though.
And Theo, well, I think Theo's going to be like the baddie of the show
eventually.
I think that he's like the Fire Fist from Deadpool 2. He's like the kid who's going to like grow up to destroy the world if they don't do something about it and stop him.
Yeah, because I mean, this is what they said. They said they're going to do 5 seasons, I think. So, and you never know.
Side note, I was watching Bronwyn the whole time going, I know her. Why do I know her? She looks super familiar. Nora. I had to look her up. I know her from How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, Nora from How I Met Your Mother. Oh, at first, when she first started, I'm like not that.
I haven't watched it since it stopped airing. I don't think.
Not that I'm gonna say her name wrong. Morfydd Clark, who plays Galadriel.
Morfydd Clark. I think that's close you can get. Yeah.
Yeah, that's as close as I'm gonna get, guys. Not that she's not an attractive woman, but when Sarah, that's Marigold.
Nazanin Boniati or something.
Yes, when Bronwyn shows up, I'm like, oh yes, gorgeous hot chick. Yeah, I'm gonna follow this character. But it's like, yeah, and I mean, Nori's an attractive girl for a Harfoot. Yeah. That's gonna be the hardest thing. It's not just saying Hobbit anymore. But no, I mean, I think like I said, I keep having to go back and forth with these names. I think Arondir, his introduction, outside of him maybe doing a badass fight sequence, I think that was probably the best introduction to have him. Like him walking into that tavern and just kind of being like, what's going on? And I love that they have like a face as a fucking like chest plate. Like that was cool. I thought that was like such great detail. But like him like blocking that punch, like for the bartender trying to punch the kid, like no, like dude, you're fine. But like that was the one thing that I was kind of like, what the fuck? We didn't see what happened with him. Like he got pulled into the darkness and we didn't see him again. It's like, well, we better start off episode 3 with him because I want to see what the fuck goes on with his character. Because I keep seeing this one snippet. It's a teaser. And it's one snippet of him in the woods. And it's such a badass, because he's an elf. Of course he's got a badass shot. But there's this one shot where I'm like, that is cool. And I thought it was going to be in the first 2 episodes because they kept showing it. So I was like, well, that's clearly going to be in the second episode. And it wasn't. So I'm excited for that character. To me, my favorite right now, you already know where I'm going with this, is Durin and Elrond. And at first I'm like, okay, the dwarves, like we just went through the Hobbit, like, okay, it is what it is. Like I said, here is a situation where, like I said, in the first episode, everything was exposition dump. I didn't care about the characters. I didn't have anything. You have this great budget. You have this amazing budget. But to me, the best fucking scene in the 2 episodes is an elevator ride between 2 friends. That moment with Durin where when Elrond's like, dude, I don't understand why you're mad at me. Like, what did I do? And him going like, it's been 20 years. You missed my wedding. You missed the birth of my 2 children. 20 years is nothing to you. It's a lot to me. And like just showing all that emotion and just like burying his heart out to Elrond and that point. And then Elrond, instead of going, well, fuck, you know, him going, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
like,
instead of trying to defend himself, he's like, congratulations on your wedding and birth of
yes.
children. I'm sorry.
Like right there, I was like, here we go.
I love that relationship between them. Yeah.
Like I'm invested, and then you have him like, well, you're coming in to apologize to her, and then you're leaving.
You're not staying for dinner. Would you like to stay for dinner?
Yeah, I loved all of that. And then the 2 little kids showing up with the big heads. Hey, I told you to stay out of my head. You know, like everything about this is Lord of the Rings to me. Like that's.
And I was actually worried, honestly, because the dwarves to me have always been the comic relief of the series.
Yeah.
Of the movie, of the films at least. And John Rhys Davies says Gimli. I mean, he obviously served a purpose, but he was clearly the comic relief. And then in the Hobbit movies, just like all the dwarves, just kind of like
they were just
whatever.
Kind of there.
But they're there. But this was like you said, it's not only does he play the character well, but the relationship between those 2 people is probably the most interesting relationship so far of the show.
That was the first moment in these 2 hours or 2 hours and 15 minutes where I was like, you've now officially grabbed me and I'm officially locked in. Like everything looks great and all this kind of stuff. But this is the first moment where I'm going, yes, I love what I just saw here. The second moment was with Nori, when her and Poppy are arguing over the stranger and she's just like, look, I have to do this. I feel like this person was meant to be found by me, and I'm the only one that could have done this, and this is why I'm doing this. Like, cool. I understand you now, Nori. Like that, like you're very much like Frodo Sam here. Like, you have to do this. Like, there's no way around this. No one else can do this but you, and that's why you have to do this. I now am 100% behind your character, and you're not just some, you know, oh, it's a Harfoot Hobbit kind of character. No, you gave me your motivations. You gave me your character right there, and it was in 4 lines. You did this. Where were those 4 lines earlier in the show? No idea. But when you did it with such believability that I am now backing your character. And then Galadriel is just Galadriel. You're going to follow her because it's Galadriel. And even with Galadriel's was more because of her brother. I'm going to follow Galadriel because of the story of her brother. And I will say this, that sequence in the water with I guess it's the worm. But that shot where she's swimming and it's doing like this half shot and you're seeing like it destroy the boat.
Oh, I love the way that was done.
Gorgeous.
Where it's like she's swimming, you're seeing it happen in the background. Oh
yes, like you're not watching her, you're watching everything behind her. Like there's that one where like the bodies in the water just get swooped up.
That was done so well. Yeah.
It was like I said, $60 million budget per episode. You better be making this shit look good. All that looked great, and then even the one moment in I'm gonna say Borwin, however you say the hot chick's name.
Bronwyn.
I keep forgetting the R. That moment with the orc, with her and Theo, that was a very like, and that's the thing too. And I saw someone else mention this. It's like in Lord of the Rings, and I guess technically in The Hobbit, the orcs in a big group, they kind of are like stormtroopers. They're bumbling idiots. They're, you know, in force, they're very dangerous, but they really are except for like the Uruk-hai in Fellowship. Like they're all for the most part, and the white, I'm blanking on the white one from The Hobbit. You know, they're outside of those 2, the Hobbits, like, as long as you got someone who knows what the fuck they're doing, the orcs are not really that scary. This orc was scary, and this orc would not go down.
Well, that's a straight up horror movie scene. Yeah.
Oh yeah, like yeah, it was very much a horror movie scene, and like in the Lord of the Rings, they're the 2 things that they stabbed, like he would have been dead. This one just kept coming and coming. You get that one moment where Theo jumps off with the rope and he's hanging. I was like, oh, okay, that's the end of it. And he's like, nope, rope broke. And it's like, oh shit. Like there's so many like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? And that's just one. That was just one of them. And it's like, you're developing these orcs to look more bloodthirsty in this time. That is what's going to save this show from not feeling like a Lord of the Rings rehash. You got to do things that's not going to make us think, okay, well, this is just Lord of the Rings light. And I think for the most part, especially that second episode to me was so strong. And like I said, getting them out of the exposition stuff out of the way and developing the world, developing these characters, that I felt so much better after the second episode than I did the first, which, like I said, that's why they released them together. But there's so much I liked about the second episode. And I know I talked a lot, so you go. But
I mostly covered everything I had to say. Yeah, because the only thing I'd love to comment on, which you already discussed, and was that relationship between Durin and Elrond. Because it was like, I knew this took place, 1,500 years before. So I'm like, okay, this is back before when elves and dwarves still got along. They weren't like, they didn't hate each other. But then it's like, oh wait, no, they don't get along. Well, it's not they hate each other as races. Just this particular dwarf hates this particular elf. So it's like,
yeah, and I don't know why. I just know there is. Durin is important because there is a Durin's Day in Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. So we know he's an important character. I don't know what he does to get that, and I don't want to know. I want to watch it. But I know, like, oh, this character's important. But I think if you take that Elrond and Durin scene out, I don't think these first two episodes work nearly as well. I think that scene is such a strong bridge.
I think it's easily one of the best scenes, but I don't think it's a weaker show because it's not like you take that out.
To me, that was the bridge of finally getting the characters.
Yeah, to me that scene, that was definitely one of the best scenes. But to me, you take that scene out, I'm like, oh well, now I don't like the show as much. I think it's just
no, it's just one of those things where it's like it's starting to get a little better, but I still feel like there's a lot of characters that are underdeveloped. Whereas like you added that, it's like it seemed like once that happened, every character just went up. It's like everyone was like, okay, now these characters are gonna have their moments, and these characters are gonna have their moments.
I will say, in like the last half of the second episode, it seemed like they were jumping from place to place.
They were. It was almost like they had a time limit, and they were like, shit, we gotta get out of here in 5. We got hard 5.
Like, wait, what's happening over here? Wait, what's happening over here now? Wait, what's happening over there? And I get it because all this stuff's happening at the same time, and you want to have this feeling of.
They probably could have added another 10 minutes.
But it definitely was building to a climax. So yeah.
Yes. And I'm excited to see where it goes from here. When it ended, I was like, I want episode 3 now. Much like I felt like with House of Dragon after the first episode, even after the second episode, and how we didn't feel after She-Hulk episode 3. But nonetheless, I mean, like I said, these two shows are constantly going to be battling each other. I mean, they're constantly going to be used against each other in terms of arguments.
So people are going to compare them, and so I feel like I'm just going to enjoy them both. I don't want to get involved in either or.
Let's embrace because that was the thing when Game of Thrones started. Everyone goes, it's an adult Lord of the Rings. Because that's all a lot of people had at that point. Was like Lord of the Rings. Here's Game of Thrones. What's Game of Thrones? It's Lord of the Rings without the ring, and it's basically about the kingdoms and all that kind of stuff. But it's very R. All right, cool. And that was the intro to do it. Now you got them both going at the exact same time,
and they're both doing prequel stories from hundreds of years before.
So they can just build from there, and it's one of those things where it's like. That's why I wanted to talk about this because it's like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings, they're basically movies. They're that good. They're worth talking about. And that's why I wanted to do this episode because there's just no good movie stuff to talk about at all because it's been pitiful, the movies lately. But these are events. These are big time events. We should have done Stranger Things, but we didn't. Maybe we'll do the final season of Stranger Things. We'll maybe bring that back in. But House of the Dragon, Rings of Power is 2 shows that you and I are locked in on. They are must-watches as soon as they get released.
And She-Hulk is also a show.
What's that?
And She-Hulk is a show.
And She-Hulk's a show. Whether or not you and I continue to do this, whether it's after every week or whether we maybe come back around the end of the seasons and do an end of the season thing, we'll decide that later. But this is definitely not going to be the last time we're going to talk about these 2 shows and maybe She-Hulk. But I'm excited. I'm so excited for. I know that Sunday is House of the Dragon, and I'm like, yes, it's only 2 days away from House of the Dragon. I can't wait to watch this. And I was bummed knowing that I had to wait a whole another week for Rings of Power. But any last things you want to add before we end this?
I would like to add that it sucks that from now on Rings of Power will come out while I'm at work. So I won't get to watch it till hours later.
Shit, that's right.
Hours later.
That's right, because I think they're releasing at what, like 11? We're Central Time, so
it's midnight Eastern Time is when they're going to be releasing them.
Yeah, so even if I have to work early in the morning, I can at least still watch that before. Whereas, like,
I'll still watch it when I get home from work. I'll just sleep.
Yeah, I know, but like at that time, it's like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning for you. For me, I'm asleep. And like with the MCU shows, it's like if I have to work in the morning, like I'm not gonna watch She-Hulk because it comes out at 2 a.m. It's like I was like, I'm going to bed. But at least with Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, I know I keep using the old versions of the names. Yeah. I don't care.
But both of them, I am pleasantly surprised. Both of them, I am interested enough to at least keep watching for now. And we'll see.
I'm excited. I'm happy. What a great great TV we've got to watch now. Now, if only the movies would catch up. But we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you guys did, go ahead and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. Of course, follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, like I said, it's not really much in terms of movies. Pinocchio comes out next week. I'll watch that. If it's worth talking about, I'll do a review. I was going to do reviews. I did see 3 movies here in the last week. I saw Me Time on Netflix, 13 Lives on Prime, and Samaritan on Prime. And I was going to do a review for them, but I just kind of didn't feel like it. They 13 Lives is good. It's good. If you guys have not seen it, it's a good movie, but it's like, I don't feel like it was worthy of doing an actual review for. Samaritan, Brian and I are both in agreement. It's fine. The twist is not a fucking twist. We both said the first line of the movie, we knew the twist. Yeah. And it doesn't shy away from forcing that twist down your throat. So when it actually happens, no, motherfucker, have you been paying attention to the movie? This is not a shocking twist at all.
Have you ever seen a movie ever?
Yeah, ever. Samaritan's fine for a streaming movie. If it had gotten into theaters, it would have gotten destroyed. And Me Time shows that Kevin Hart, to me, is starting to become the new Adam Sandler on Netflix. 2 bad movies this year, both Netflix films. I did not like Me Time at all. I did not like The Man from Toronto at all. So yeah, those are my little quick mini reviews, and I think you saw all 3 of them. I think you're kind of, for the most part.
Samaritan you covered. Me Time, I didn't hate it. It's just completely forgettable. It's like whatever. It's what you expect a Netflix movie to be that aren't like the premiere Netflix movies. What was the third one?
13 Lives.
13 Lives. Well-made movie. I just don't care what the story is. It's well done.
Did you see that they're now doing a Netflix show for it?
Yeah, well, that kind of goes into one of our upcoming shows. It's like, but yeah, they had these both in production at the same time, and it's like, but by the time one comes out, do people care about the other one?
That was going to be my tie-in for our show.
We'll
that was going to be my tie-in. Like they said, Pinocchio review we'll probably have. We're also going to have another Movie Crusaders chat about. Is we're going to be talking about something that I've always wanted to talk about on the show, but I didn't have a co-host at the time when I wanted to do it. And now I got Brian, so now we're going to do it. We're going to talk about sister movies. And if you don't know what sister movies are, we got some examples. 13 Lives and was it the I forgot what the title.
It's called like the Cave Rescue or some generic title like that.
Cave Rescue or something like that. Or Pinocchio and Pinocchio coming out this year. It's basically 2 movies that are very, very similar, if not almost exactly alike, that are coming out in the same year. I think was it Jungle Book and Mowgli was one. And we're going to talk about
Tombstone and White Earp. We'll talk about that.
Yes, although there's so many. But that's what that episode's going to be like. We're going to be doing that episode, I think, next week, if not the week after that. Then we will also be having our end of summer recap, and then also our looking towards the fall end of year movie preview. We're going to go over what we think the rest of the movies for the year are going to look at and shape as. And then at the end of the month, we're going to have our very special Halloween episode. For any of you guys who have ever been on Facebook or Twitter at all in the last decade, you guys have seen these lists where it's like every day you pick a movie, like watch your favorite slasher film, watch your favorite horror movie with a twist. We're going to do that. We're going to pick a topic for each day of October, and we're both going to pick a movie that we think you guys should watch based on that topic, and you guys can use that and watch that all through October for your Halloween excitement. We're very excited to do that show. We still have the gameplay, what the hell we're going to do, but we're excited. We have planned this episode for a year. Like we had the thing planned back in October last year. but it was already like a week before Halloween. I was like, we're not gonna fucking do it right now.
I got a great idea. Oh wait, we're too late.
I was like, oh wait, well, let's put a pin in that. Wait till next year, and that's what we basically did. So we're gonna finally shoot that episode, as well as I think what the hell comes out? Don't Worry, Darling. I can't really think of anything else that comes out in September. I mean, that's how sad.
There's nothing big. There's a movie that I think was intriguing called Barbarian. There's Blonde. Will be from Netflix.
Yeah, Blonde. I did finally see a trailer for Barbarian. By the way, it's a movie.
Clerks 3.
But the problem is Clerks 3 is not going to get released in theaters though.
He's doing the roadshow thing, and they're also doing like Fathom events. If your theaters ever take part in that, they're gonna do it that way. The Woman King comes out. Pearl, the prequel to X, coming out. See How They Run with Sam Rockwell and
I actually do kind of want to see that mainly because of Rockwell.
Avatar comes back out.
Focus 2. Bros.
Yeah, it's a fairly weak month though.
Yeah, it's outside of like maybe 2-3 movies out of there, it's not very exciting. Which is why we're doing all these other shows. Which, like I said, House of the Dragon and Rings of Power. That's what we're gonna be focusing on. Like I said, whether or not we do weekly episodes or whether we just come back at the end of the year, we'll decide that. But nonetheless, hope you guys enjoyed this episode of these 3 movies and She-Hulk. But yes, until next time, I'm Sean Wassercrew. That is Brian Michaels. We are the Movie Crusaders. Until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon. Good night, Movie Crusaders.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.